It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast as we talk property news, real estate right around Australia 7 days a week. And you can hear us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as Amazon. Weekend, once again, went way too quickly, didn't it? Back into another Monday and the 9th day today of September. Now, homeowners in Victoria, they are seeing impressive returns. You might be listening to us in Victoria, sitting on a piece of land, a piece of property, going, yes, that's exactly what is happening. In fact, in some cases, people are doubling or even tripling their money when selling properties in some of these high demand areas. If you look at in Summers on the Mornington Peninsula, sellers achieved a median profit of nearly 270% over their purchase price. That's according to a Domain report. Nearby Balnarring, that saw 205% profit, while Wonga Park, Cannons Creek and Mount Beauty also significant gains. In Melbourne's inner south, Middle Park and Elstonwick, owners enjoyed profits of nearly 197 and 187% respectively. So they're pretty big numbers. And this morning we're going to catch up with Demographer Mark McCrindle, who knows a thing or two about all of what is taking place with those high prices. And good morning to you, Mark. Welcome into the Real Estate Breakfast.
Oh, thanks very much. Good to be chatting with you.
Now, houses in regional and coastal areas, they seem to be loving the price growth for their vendors. Of course, many of these areas were, and it's worth pointing out, were starting from a lower base point, weren't they?
They sure were. Pre-pandemic, the regions were a long way from where the economic engine room and the employment engine room was in Melbourne. And so they had a low price point. Their demand was low as well. And also they're areas where people buy and hold. These are older populations. They might have been long-held family holiday places. So obviously the longer something is held, then when it does sell, the higher the increase. And that's partly what's being picked up here. But certainly it's the case that the regions have taken off, not just in Victoria, but across Australia since the pandemic, as people have realised they don't need to commute into the CBD every day. A bit of work from home or fully work from home means people can work where they want to. And so the regions are really running hot.
And just how much of a factor has the low turnover rates in popular urban city areas had on these rising prices?
Yes, well, a lot of the high price is because there's just low volume. There's just low numbers of homes on the market, and it's demand and supply. Demand is red hot, supply is a little lower, and so that's been a factor. So yeah, these areas that are held for a long time do end up with a higher price rate relative to the purchase price, partly because of the length of ownership, partly because there's just not a lot of them going up. And so, these are lifestyle places. People buy, they hold, they raise a family in these areas. They're not like some of the inner urban areas where you really do get high turnover, and none of these are units. These are all detached homes.
Yeah, and just sort of sticking with the lifestyle properties, it seems that during and after the pandemic, people really did chase these lifestyle properties. You run the numbers, you track all of that as a demographer. Is the pandemic in regard to lifestyle properties, is that a bit of an anomaly or not?
Well, it's here to stay. The regard people have for the regions, and not just the coastal areas, which have always been a bit aspirational for Australians, but inland regional areas, they are the places that are in demand because people have firstly seen the affordability of the regions relative to their capital cities. And this is a national trend. So affordability is driving much of the demand, much of the purchasing at the moment. And even though we've seen big price rises in these regional areas, as we're discussing, the prices are still well below the CBD or the inner urban equivalents. The second factor is lifestyle or livability. And people are recognizing that if they can get a bit of balance in their life and maybe work from a region and enjoy all that has to offer in that lifestyle perspective, then that might be a nice change. So what they're getting for their money relative to the lifestyle is pretty impressive in the regions and coastal areas, and that's been quite the demand factor. And then that big one, not just being attached to a capital city, but a bit further removed, that has really opened up the regions and opened up the prices. And while the red hot growth in the regions that we saw immediately after the pandemic has eased off, we still are seeing this ongoing demand for Australians looking for regional properties.
Yeah, that demand is just going to continue. Right, we're talking with Mark McCrindle this morning on our Monday morning. We'll come back after this and catch up with more of his thoughts.
It's the Real Estate Podcast, talking properties from 6 a.m. every day, from every corner of the Australian real estate market.
I had two bids come in at the same time, one at 2.5 and then we had a knockout bid at 3 million. So $500,000 above what I was asking. And in my 15 years of real estate and as an auctioneer, I've never had that happen.
It's funny because when you build something yourself, everything around you has a story. You know, you remember when you put the architraves in and when you lay the floor. And I don't know, it does seem surreal that I built it with my partner at the time, Max, and that I didn't know anything about building. And then, but you just learn and you just take one day at a time and one task at a time and you somehow get there.
We've also seen the stamp duty concessions change from 5 to 550, having some benefits, to now being between 7 to 800,000, which ties in relatively well for entry-level opportunities on the Sunshine Coast.
Probably 50 to 60% of our offers are from investors from interstate.
Why pay a premium for advertising that's too expensive? Our listeners are actively engaged in the real estate market. Get your message directly into the ears that can influence your business.
And it is a Real Estate Monday. We are talking with demographer Mark McCrindle, giving us a little bit of a breakdown on some of these massive properties. I just want to sort of pick up on the population growth in Victoria. It ain't slowing down. More and more people, of course, coming into the region which you touched on. And this is sort of going to fuel things for some time to come. I mean, there's no silver bullet.
Oh, exactly right. Victoria is the fastest growing state at the moment. Numerically, it added just in the last 12 months, almost 190,000 additional people, much of that through migration, a little bit through natural increase, and a little bit through the interstate flow of things as well, people coming and going across the state, but particularly the regions are getting that interstate and intrastate population growth. So the state increased its population by 2.8% in a single year. Now, keep in mind that it's added more people than any other state, and yet a state like New South Wales is 20% larger. So that just highlights how solid the growth is, that it's adding more people than even the largest state of New South Wales. So that growth is expected to continue, as is the growth across Australia, and that demand is, with population increase, is not being met by supply of housing, and so we are seeing this ongoing upward pressure on house prices.
And if you look at Australia, is Australia a little bit different to other countries in terms of just how long people are prepared to hold on to their properties? I mean, this is particularly noticeable in these good suburbs where the equity growth people have has been borne out in these numbers that you and I are talking about this morning, that growth factor.
Yeah, that's right. We do tend to buy and hold, particularly in these areas where people look to buy a home, raise the children there, perhaps have an empty nest period there for a while before they finally sell. Those that have paid off their mortgage in Australia stay about 14 years. And if it's a detached home, the average is a little longer. So yes, we do tend to live in these places for a fair while, and that's just the average. So some of these places haven't been on the market for 2 or 3 decades. They also are places with larger land size, larger house blocks, because they are a little older. And so that, amidst, again, the population growth, does give the opportunity for people coming in to think about subdivision or a secondary dwelling, and that's driving the price up as well compared to new house and land packages. So, they've got a lot going for them, and the fact that, they're being held for a while means that house price increase has been significant. That's why you're getting the doubling or the trebling for these houses in these suburbs.
Yeah, hold on as long as you can is the motto. And just on that point, the millennials, you see them talking about buying their forever homes. I think when I was at a similar age, there was no way that I was buying a property saying this is my forever home. It was my stepping stone. But I just wonder how much of a factor the mum and dad bank is playing here, because these homes, some of them are quite substantial, which means that, for the normal person that doesn't have that sort of equity being handed to them from their parents, they might be on their 3rd or 4th property, but the millennials coming from that wealth factor, boom, straight into a forever home.
Well, we've called it the property ladder for a reason. Normally, people started the Aussie dream at the bottom rung and worked their way up over time. Maybe it was a unit in a place a little bit away from their ideal suburb, but hey, that's where they started, the 1-bedders, the 2-bedders, and moved on up through the property cycle over time. But yes, you are getting a generation that has a bit more of a focus on lifestyle, that probably aren't wanting to compromise as much. In fact, we found in our research that some of them expect to start their economic life in the manner in which they've seen their parents finish their economic life, in that nice house in the leafy suburb. And the only way that can, of course, occur in most circumstances is if the bank of mum and dad, or even the property of mum and dad, is somehow used to support that transition. So there's a bit of that takes place. But look, for most people, the Aussie dream still is attained by just buying what they can afford, and that is not normally a forever place. Some indeed aren't even wanting to live where they can afford to buy, so they're buying what they can, using that as an investment property, renting where they want to live. We call them the rentvestors, and there's a lot more of those, renting for lifestyle reasons, but investing for that earnings reason, and they're making a good fist of it.
And finally, just before I let you go, Mark, what has been something that has perhaps surprised you this year for 2024 as, you look at the numbers and the trends, the demography? Is there anything that kind of, above anything else, really puts its head above most other things and you're surprised by?
Ongoing population growth of Australia, it's hard to overstate its impacts. There was a thought as we opened our borders once more after the pandemic that maybe it'd take a while for those migration numbers to come back. Maybe they'd settle a little bit below what they had been over the medium term, but actually they sprung back in an almost instant way to all-time records, and that, despite federal government discussions around this, has remained high to all-time annual records. So that, amidst a slower completion or build rate in Australia, has led to this housing challenge that we're seeing, and it's going to remain for the rest of this decade. It's just going to take a fair while to get any catch-up going and to ease off on the numbers. So that's probably the big thing. And the other one is just the ongoing search in the regions. It wasn't just adaptation as we saw work from home in the pandemic. Even as the CBDs are coming back and office workers are coming back and people are saying, look, let's get back to work 3 or 4 days a week in office, we're still seeing that demand for the regions. They're two factors that seem here to stay, the population growth and the rebalancing of population to the regions. It's just the new way of living in Australia.
Yeah, it's changing all the time, that is for sure. All right then, Mark, well, thank you for taking the time to sort of break down most of what we've just laid out, and enjoy your day. Thanks for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning.
Oh, no, delighted to be with you. Thanks for having me.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.